And so we move to District Attorney Andrew Clark. Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks, Mike, for that nice comment. And thanks to the Booksmith group for allowing us to have this here. This is wonderful. I bought a book when I walked in the door about arson and wine. I like wine, and I'm going to talk about arson here in just a second. we just had a case around the corner that has to do with that. I'm dear friends with Dr. Dave Smith. Dr. Dave and I have been friends for 25 or 30 years, and within the last 5 years or so, we started a non-profit trying to bring the expertise of the doctors and specialists from UCSF, where he's associated, global. And our nonprofit, it has some local contracts, but I think that the idea that germinated here and Dr. Dave's expertise is something that can be used around the world. Just today, I don't know if anybody noticed it, but the World Health Organization met and was speaking on the issue of shifting the focus of drug problems. This occurred just today, so this is hot off the presses. And some of those people at the conference were saying that Switzerland, Brazil, Costa Rica, and Uruguay were among the countries calling for the abolishment of capital punishment for drug-related felonies, while China, Iran, and Indonesia were not. They felt that each country should be able to deal with that issue on their own. The death penalty they're talking about. So it kind of puts a little bit of perspective on what's happening around the world and the need for perhaps dealing with some of these issues. Thank you to David Talbot for writing that great book, Seasons of the Witch. We loved reading that. And his new book, The Devil's Chessboard, if you haven't read it, about the Dulles brothers, is fantastic as well. And I'm honored to be here with the rest of the panelists. Gavin Newsom's Blue Ribbon panel on legalization, Dennis McNally and the Grateful Dead are all parts of my background, having grown up here in San Francisco. So we try to deal with the issue of marijuana here in San Francisco, and it's lumped in with all these other drugs. When you discuss it and how it's scheduled, it comes in with all these drugs that Michael was just talking about. How Tony Serra wants to deal with the LSD manufacturers, and there's marijuana, and there's methamphetamines, and PCP, and peyote, and heroin, and GHB now, and crack cocaine, and cocaine. And all these drugs are part of the law here in California that the legislature tries to tackle. And so, I don't know if you know it or not, but possession of marijuana under an ounce is an infraction. And possession of more than an ounce is a misdemeanor. And possession for the purposes of sale is a felony. And in California, felonies are either low, medium, or high, 16 months, 2 years, or 3 years for that felony. So tomorrow, 4/20 in Golden Gate Park, there's going to be an avalanche of young people, and a lot of people smoking marijuana and celebrating that date. And there might be some kid right now out at State College rolling up a couple of joints for tomorrow, and maybe he'll sell a couple. Well, if he possesses those joints for the purpose of sale, technically he's guilty of a felony and could be sentenced to 16 months, 2 or 3 years for that. And that's just a kid who's just going to smoke a joint tomorrow in Golden Gate Park with some other people who have the same kind of feelings he does about the drug, he or she does about the drug. So it just kind of puts in perspective some of the exposure that possession for sale of drugs have. So when Dave asked me to join this group, and he wanted to talk about marijuana from the bust in 1967 and how it's kind of changed to today. Well, I've been a prosecutor about 25 years, and I've handled lots of different cases over that career. And the way it's handled today is like, we don't want to see it. Get it out of here. It's not worth the taxpayers' money to prosecute somebody who's walking around with marijuana. That's a waste. However, for example, on Haight Street, people are trying to do their business here at the Booksmith and all the other businesses, so they get a little bummed out when lots of kind of characters that are sleeping in the park come down and are peddling marijuana or other drugs on their doorstep as they're trying to do business. So they want to be open-minded, but they don't want to see that, and so they might call the cops or bug the cops about doing something about it. So therein lies the rub, and something has to be done to enforce the law, but keep the peace, etc. And so that's kind of the balance today. I'll talk about our case. Well, I'll talk about that right now. Just a year ago or so, right around the corner, kaboom! A explosion and fire happens in an apartment building. And the fire department comes to put it out, and it turns out it's a grow house. And somebody jerry-rigged the electricity, and they're plumbing it. And they're not renting the apartment, they're just growing dope in the apartment. And so it causes a big fire, and the neighbors of the big fire go, holy smokes, we're trying to live here, and this is a big manufacturing location, and the people that are coming in are kind of sketchy or shady, and you know, we want this out of here. And so that group that got arrested called Mike Stepanian and his group, and Mike comes down to talk about the fire. And so we have to deal with it, okay? Because you can't just let it slide when a building burned down and people are put out of their house. The insurance companies are involved, the police are involved, the fire department's involved, the building department's involved, and thank God nobody was hurt, you know, physically, but you can't let it slide. So we have to do something about it. We have to work out some deal. And although possession or manufacturing, cultivating is even greater than the 16, 2, or 3 years of exposure. And so, you know, plus there's the negligent causing of a fire, a violation of 452 of the Penal Code, not a drug-related offense, but an arson-related offense. And that could really tangle you up and perhaps require you to register for the rest of your life as an arsonist under certain circumstances. So Mike has a big bag of crap he's got to deal with, and we worked it out. We worked it out. But that's one example of a case just around the corner. Just another minute or two. A second case from just where Hippie Hill is, where they're all going to be tomorrow. About the same time as that fire, a guy comes back from Humboldt to collect the money for the ounce of dope that he fronted to the guy to sell. So he comes down from Northern California with his dope, distributes it to some people who go distribute it for him. He'll come back in a couple of weeks and collect the dough. And the fella one of the fellas he fronted a pound to, didn't give him any money and didn't have the pound. And so that's not good for business. And so he kind of tells a few of his buddies, hey, that's bullshit, I got to get paid. And so they get riled up and they go over to Hippie Hill where the guy is. And the fella who fronted the dope, the marijuana, is kind of a stoner from Humboldt, but he has a couple of young guys who he brought along with him just to make sure he got his money or got his message across. Well, one of those guys takes a skateboard and smacks the guy. Kills him. So he's dead at the merry-go-round as he wandered across the park having a subdural and then blah, 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 and he's dead. Okay, so the guys who did it the guy from Humboldt and the guy with the skateboard get caught. And you can't let it slide. You know, there's a dead body here, and it's a mess. So we have to deal with it. So those are just a couple of cases within the last year, from within a couple of blocks of here, that kind of stem from some marijuana-related issues.
Sandy, tell the butane hash oil story.
That's one other thing that we're seeing. So some of the not so great weed, not the stuff from Humboldt, but maybe some lower end stuff. People have discovered that if you stuff it into a PVC pipe, just stuff it all in there, and then you get some butane, like the lighters of butane that you use, and you put that butane through the PVC pipe. Dripping out the other end will be this hash oil, which you can sell and make extra good dough. But what a lot of these people don't realize is that the byproduct gas of the butane that comes out is heavier than air, and it's invisible. So it starts building up, and after you got a nice thing, hey, let's have a bong hit, or let's fire up a cigarette, kaboom! And so there's a lot of those. That's not just one, but there's a lot of those cases where the houses are blowing up, and it's big fire, and these are the kinds of issues. So those were just some of the things I wanted to share about my experience with marijuana, having grown up here in San Francisco and been a Grateful Dead fan and worked with these folks. It's great to see this large group that goes all the way back to the back of the store with, I see a couple of judges and some defense lawyers, and so it's great to have you here.
Why do you bring up residents?
Because they're related to marijuana.
Well, doesn't since have occurred had marijuana not been prohibited by law?
Okay, we're gonna have questions after.
That's
It's supposed to be a spectrum.